Hi everyone. Today we're doing Lesson 3, Session 2 in your Ready Math Workbook. We'll be covering pages 37 through page 40. So if you'd like to take out your math workbook, please turn to page 37. While you're turning there, today we're going to be practicing finding volume using formulas. Remember that last session, I should say, we learned two new volume formulas that we can use to find the volume of a rectangular prism. Before we get going, I want to just run through some of our volume vocabulary so we can just remember what we're talking about when we see a word. So if we see the word base, the base is usually one side of a prism, and it's usually the bottom of the prism. So remember that we talked about how the base, and you can find the area of the base by multiplying the length times the width. So the length times the width equals the base. So in this case, the volume of the base would be, the area of the base would be 6 square units, or 6 units squared. Area is the amount of space in a closed look at how I spell, in a closed two-dimensional figure. The area is equal to length times width. So when we talk about the area of the base, we're talking about the length times the width. Volume is the amount of space inside a solid figure. So how many unit cubes fill up this whole space? That would be the volume. And whenever we're talking about volume, we're talking about cubic units. That's what that 3 means. It means cubic. This 2 means square. But in our case, we're talking about cubic units. Then finally, our last vocabulary word that we're looking at today is, or vocabulary idea, is volume formula. The two different volume formulas we learned were that volume equals length times width times height, or V equals L times W times H, or volume equals base times height, or volume V equals B times H. So that being said, let's get going. So let's go ahead and read this problem. I'm going to read it. We're going to ask the 3 questions we always ask when we look at the beginning question. Remember, we always ask, what is this problem what is this problem about? What are we trying to find out? And what is the important information? So let's read through the question. Gareth has a rectangular pencil cup on his desk. The cup is 3 inches long, 2 inches wide, and 5 inches high. What is the volume of the pencil cup? So, first of all, what is this problem talking about? It's talking about Gareth's pencil cup. Okay? So, what are we trying to find out in this problem? What is it that we're trying to solve? And that is, usually what we're trying to solve is, what is the question? What's the question in the problem? And in this case, the question is, my autofocus is just not having, there we go. The question we're trying to solve is, what is the volume of the pencil cup? And then finally, we need to find out what is the important information. We don't have a picture this time. We've had a picture all the other times, but now we don't anymore. But don't worry, all the information we need to solve this problem is in the question. So we need to recognize that the cup is 3 inches long, 2 inches wide, and 5 inches high. So with all of that information, you can actually find the volume of Gareth's pencil cup. So right now, I want you to go ahead and pause the video, and then I want you to solve and find the volume of Gareth's pencil cup here in the Try It section. You should have paused the video. If you haven't, do it now. All right, I'm not going to solve it here. I'm going to go to the next page where we will look and see how we can solve it. So, there are different ways that we can understand using the dimensions of the rectangular prism to find its volume. So this is the same problem that we just read. Remember, we have Gareth's pencil cup. We're trying to find what the volume of the pencil cup is, and we know it is 3 inches long. So let's go ahead and put our 3 inches, our length equals 3 inches. It's 2 inches wide, so our width is equal to 2 inches. And then it is 5 inches high. So let's put our height is equal to 5 inches. Now, if we're looking here, we know that this prism and this prism are similar or the same. So look at this prism and this prism, and I just want you to make note of what is similar and what is different about the two prisms. Now I want to go ahead and keep thinking about that. We're going to go over to page 39, and we're going to look at these two pages together. All right, so now you will use the problem from the previous page to help you understand and use formulas to find volume. Number 1, explain how you can find the volume of a pencil cup using the prism shown in Picture It, find the volume. So look here at this volume, at this picture. How can you find the volume? You just did this on the last page, so you used some method. So there are two different methods you could do. In this case, I'm going to use the method volume equals base times height. So first, we found the area of the base by multiplying the length and the width. So the base is equal to 3 times 2, which equals 6. And then we multiplied the base times the height of the prism. So then the volume equals the base, which is 6, times the height, which is 5, which equals 30, because 6 times 5 is 30. And then remember, we're doing volume, so what's that word that starts with a C that we need to use? That's right, cubic. So our volume is 30 cubic inches. Now, if you solve this differently, your explanation for number 1 might look a little bit different than mine. But if you solved it the same way, you can go ahead and pause the video and copy down the answer that I wrote. If not, pause the video and write down how you did it. All right, we're going to move on to number 2. Number 2 says, explain how the area of the base. So we're just talking about the area of the base in Picture It and the area of the base in Model It. Okay? How do they relate to each other? Right now, go ahead and write a quick sentence on number 2 that says, how are they, how do they relate? How are they the same? If you haven't finished yet, you can pause it and finish writing your answer. All right. The area of the base in both models is 6 square inches. You might have just said that the area of the base in both models is 6. That works, but don't forget that you do need a label. So when we talk about the area, we always use the square units. When we talk about volume, we use cubic units. So here would be cubic inches because we're multiplying the length times width times height. But if we're just talking about the base, it's going to be square because we're only multiplying 2. Number 3, explain how you can use the prism and Model It. How can you use this prism to find the volume of the pencil cup? Go ahead and write how you would do it. You can always pause. All right, there are actually 2 ways that you could solve this. You could multiply the base times the height to find the total volume. So you could use this method, or this formula, I should say, or you can multiply the length times the width times the height and use this formula. Either way is going to find, you're going to get to the same volume. It doesn't matter if you use volume equals base times height or if you use volume equals length times width times height. Number 4, use the volume formulas and model it to write two different multiplication equations you can use to find the volume of the pencil cup. So, the first way we could do it, let's use volume equals length times width times height. So the length is 3, the width is 2, and the height is 5. So 3 times 2 is 6. 6 times 5 equals 30 cubic inches. Now let's try the method of base times height. We know that the base is the length times the width. So 3 times 2 equals 6. And then we're going to multiply that times the height, which is 5. So the volume equals 6 times 5, which equals 30 cubic inches. Number 5 says, explain how you can use the dimensions of a rectangular prism to find its volume. So you can use either the formula base times height or the formula volume equals length times width times height. It doesn't matter which formula you use, as we've shown today, that no matter what you use, it's going to give you the same results. Now finally on number 6, we're going to reflect. I want you to go ahead and I'll read it, and then I want you to pause it and fill out this, this reflection. The strategy that I like best is volume equals, and then you're going to choose volume equals base times height or volume equals length times width times height. And then tell me why. The strategy I like best is this because, and then give me 1 or 2 sentences that tells me why you prefer one method over the other. Now, I don't want you to say something like, oh, I like this because it's easier. I want you to tell me a real reason, not just that it's easier, as to why you prefer one method over the other. Go ahead and pause and finish it out. All right, before we get to independent practice today, we're going to turn the page, go to page 40, and we are going to do these 3 problems to make sure that we know what we're doing. So, number 7 says, what is the volume of a rectangular jewelry box with a length of 12 centimeters, a width of 7 centimeters, and a height of 5 centimeters? I went ahead and wrote L, W, and H for length, width, and height. So let's go ahead and fill it in. The length is 12 centimeters. The width is 7 centimeters. And the height is 5 centimeters. Now, we're going to go ahead and choose the method that we want to use to figure out the volume of this figure. So, I think for this case, I think I'm going to go with, let's do base times height. So the base is going to be 12 times 7, length times width. So what is 12 times 7? If you don't know your 12 multiplication facts, you can always look at your multiplication chart on your Avid binder, or you could multiply out what is 12 times 7. So 12 times 7 equals 2 times 7 is 14. 7 times 1 is 7 plus 1 is 8. So the base is 84. Then we're going to multiply the base times the height. So next we're going to go, okay, volume equals 84 times the height, which is 5. Now, I do not know what 84 times 5 is, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply that out. 84 times 5. 4 times 5 is 20. Carry the 2. 5 times 8 is 40, plus 2 is 42. So the answer is 420. But wait, we cannot forget to add our units. So we're talking about volume, so we know that we are talking about, we need to use that word cubic. And then what is our unit that we used? That's right, it was centimeters. So the answer to number 7 is 420 cubic centimeters. I'd like you to pause the video and try to do number 8 and 9 on your own. And then when you're finished with 8 and 9, go ahead and unpause and come back and check your work with me. All right, for number 8, it says, how much space is taken up by a book that is 12 inches long, 10 inches wide, and 1 inch tall? So this time, instead of using base times height, a volume equals base times height, I'm going to use volume equals length times width times height. So here we're going to write the volume is equal to the length times the width times the height. So 12 times 10 is 120. 120 times 1 is 120. So our solution, or our answer, is the volume is equal to 120. We're talking about volume, so cubic. And then in this case, what's the unit? Inches. Is that what you got? If not, go ahead and erase your answer and fix it and try to see where you made your mistake. Now we're going to go on to number 9. Now number 9 is a little tricky because there are 5 choices, and I don't know if you know this or not, but there were actually 2 correct answers. So if you only got one, pause the video and go back and see if you can find a second correct answer. If not, if you chose 2 answers, then let's see if you chose the 2 correct answers. So here it says, a rectangular prism has a volume of 100 cubic meters. So we know that our volume is 100 cubic meters. One of the dimensions is 5 meters. We don't know if it's the length, the width, or the height that's 5 meters, but I'm just going to pretend like it's the length. Which pairs of measurements could the other 2 dimensions of the could be the other 2 dimensions of the prism? So all we have to do is go and put in these numbers and see if the sentence makes sense. So this is going to be A. We have B, C, D, and E. So 100 equals, so they all have the same volume. They all have, we know that one of the measurements is 5. And then what we don't know is what the other 2 measurements are. So let's try A. 1 and 20. So let's see if this works. Does 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 20 is 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So does A work? Yes, it does work because they both equal 100 cubic meters. Let's try B. 5 times 10. So 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 10 is 250. Does that work? Is 100 equal to 250? No. So cross out your answer. I like to cross out my incorrect answers and fill in my correct answers so that I know that I went and checked to see if this answer worked or not. For C, let's try C. We're going to put in 10 and 10. 10 10. So 5 times 10 is 50. 50 times 10 is 500. So nope, that one doesn't work because we're trying to equal 100. Let's plug in 4 and 5. 5 times 4 times 5. 5 times 4 is 20. 20 times 5, we know because we did it up here, is 100. So D is also a correct answer. Now, I told you there were only 2 correct answers, but I still want to make sure that we check because maybe I'm wrong. Teachers make mistakes as well. So let's check. Let's put in 20 and 20. So 20 times 20. So 5 times 20 is 100. 100 times 20 is 2,000. So I wasn't wrong this time. 2,000 is not equal to 100. So that's how you solve these problems. Thanks for your hard work today. I know that that was a lot of information. You'll go ahead now and move on to your independent practice.